For years, the Legend of Zelda series has been a titan in the gaming industry. First beginning in February of 1986, this franchise has been pushing forward and innovating for nearly 40 years. With over 20 mainline titles, a handful of spin offs, and even a movie in production, The Legend of Zelda is no stranger to different ideas and pushing the boundaries when it comes to game development. The most recent Wild era is no exception to this trend. First beginning with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and ending with the recently released Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, this era has been nothing short of a breath of fresh air for the Zelda franchise, giving more life to a series that didn't even necessarily need it. Seeing as this is the end of an era, I figured there was no better time to look back at these games and discuss the impact that they had on this franchise. How did these games change the Legend of Zelda series for the better? Starting at the beginning, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was first shown off at E3 back in 2014, only it wasn't even titled Breath of the Wild at this point. While we had known a new 3D Zelda game was in development, news had been scarce over the years since the release of Skyward Sword in 2011. What we did know, however, was that this new Zelda game would be somewhat of a return to form, taking the series back to its roots. A modernized, open world version of what the original game embodied back on the NES. While this initial trailer doesn't show too much, it did create tons of excitement and buzz for what a current open world Zelda game could become. Afterwards, it would be revealed that this upcoming entry in the Zelda series would be released in 2015. Oh, wait. So, 2015 rolls around and we learn that the game, still untitled at this time, would now be released in 2016 after a short delay and wouldn't even be shown at E3 that year. Now, I remember this being slightly worrisome to me at the time, mainly due to the lack of information that we had. Sure, game delays happen all the time, and in the case of Nintendo, everyone could probably take solace in the fact that the game would still most likely be quality. After all, this isn't the first time a Zelda game has had trouble in development. Still though, for fans of the series, this was no doubt disappointing, and unfortunately, once 2016 came around, the game was delayed once again. However, this time there was some silver lining, as many began to speculate that part of the reason for these delays was so Nintendo could actually release the game on their upcoming console at the time, the Nintendo Switch. It turns out that these claims weren't off base at all, and in 2017 we got the official trailer of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, releasing for both the Nintendo Switch and Wii U. This trailer was amazing. While only about 4 minutes long, it showed us everything that we needed to get hyped for a game that some were beginning to think wouldn't even get released anytime soon. A large and gorgeous open world, our protagonist sporting a new look for the first time in years, and voice acting for the first time in series history. The first time. First time. This was everything that a Zelda fan could have wanted, and to top it all off, we finally knew when the game would be released, March 3rd, 2017. So, my teenage self decided to save up money and do whatever I could at the time to make sure I was able to buy this game at launch. I can't even recall how much sleep I lost. This game consumed me. I had so much fun playing and truly experiencing Breath of the Wild for the first time. From the moment Link steps out of the Shrine of Resurrection and walks over to the cliff overlooking the Kingdom of Hyrule, this game opens up to you in such an impactful way. Not only that, but the Great Plateau is a wonderful starting point for new players, and it never feels like it overstays its welcome despite acting as the tutorial area for this game. I always appreciated that Breath of the Wild is already a pretty hands-off game, so it's nice to have the tutorial sections not feel like they stick around for way longer than they need to. This game truly embodies the open world genre in every conceivable way. Want to go climb the mountain in the distance? Go for it. Want to visit the sands of the Gerudo Desert before Rito Village? You can do that too. From riding around the plains of Hyrule to scaling the treacherous Death Mountain, you can explore every corner of this vast and quite frankly broken down world. This game doesn't restrict the player whatsoever, and that's why I believe I, along with many others, were so drawn into this game. I remember getting off the Great Plateau for the first time and instantly getting filled with this giddy feeling of deciding where I should go or what mountain I should climb, where's the next shrine or best place to collect some armor. All of these things and more are immediately at your disposal. Breath of the Wild does an amazing job of providing the player with just enough to do as they please without losing that sense of wonder. Link can run, cook, climb, and the combat, while not the most in depth, feels fluid and very easy to get the hang of. The land is vast, but can also be difficult to navigate with different weather conditions and terrain obstacles, so it's always in your best interest to use every tool and trick that the game provides in order to make your journey as easy as possible. While this isn't a traditional Zelda game by any means, I found myself getting sucked in all the same and truly had a once in a lifetime experience during my first playthrough. The music for Breath of the Wild, while very minimalistic, is pleasant all the same, and I don't have too much to say other than that. It has just enough presence to be felt and heard while not becoming overbearing on the overall experience. We have songs and motifs that fans of the series will surely know and love, with some new themes as well. All in all, I think it's a great soundtrack and one that truly adds to an already amazing game. The story for Breath of the Wild is somewhat of a sad and kind of dark one at that. You wake up from a coma and are tasked with having to save this broken down kingdom wrecked by the wrath of this massive calamity. It's up to you to try and bring Hyrule back to its former glory while trying to recall your scattered memories. While the story doesn't reach themes as dark as, say, Majora's Mask, for example, it does touch on some pretty heavy stuff, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. The more you discover about Hyrule's history, the more you feel inclined to save this kingdom and avenge your fallen allies. Another thing I really appreciate about the story is its cast of characters. I think these are some of the most entertaining and charismatic characters since Twilight Princess, and I truly enjoyed the time I spent learning and fighting alongside them during my time playing. Both the past and present champions of each respective tribe of the Gorons, Rito, Zora, and Gerudo each have extremely distinct personalities and thankfully don't just feel like clones of one another. The voice acting in this game, while not perfect, is also very good considering it's a first in the series' history. All of these things culminate in a final confrontation with Calamity Ganon that's just, okay. It's not the worst boss fight ever, but it always felt just a tad too easy for me and somewhat anticlimactic if anything. Breath of the Wild is an amazing game, but I wouldn't consider it to be flawless, and unfortunately that's just one of the few issues I have with this game. Now, narratively speaking, I think the story and the way that it's told is great. However, Hyrule being a shell of its former self can definitely be felt within the gameplay itself and can cause this world to feel somewhat empty at times. While many of the landmarks you can discover are cool Easter eggs, that's about all they are. Easter eggs. Other than that, there's Korok's enemy camps, shrines, side quests, and the divine beasts. All things that will undoubtedly take up the majority of your time playing the game. Seeing as Breath of the Wild shifted the traditional Zelda formula, shrines essentially act as the mini dungeons for this game, with the reward being a spirit orb. Collect 4 of these to trade them in for either a heart container or a stamina vessel. Most of these shrines, with the exception of the combat trials, feature completely fun and unique puzzles for you to solve during your time playing, with the complexity ranging pretty heavily in some cases. The divine beasts, while bigger and more complex than your typical shrine, suffer from the same linear formula for all 4. You go in, solve some puzzles, activate some terminals, and you're done. These beasts also tend to blend together aesthetically, which is just another personal gripe of mine. Your reward for completing these dungeons is a unique ability for Link to use on his journey to defeat Calamity Ganon. I'm glad to say I found each and every one of these abilities extremely useful and very rewarding to acquire. While the beasts themselves may lack the typical complexity of a Zelda dungeon, the Blight bosses are sure to make you work for your prize. Koroks are used to increase inventory space, either weapons, shields, or your bows. These guys are quite literally everywhere as there's a whopping 900 of them in total, so you're always sure to have enough. I've never gone for all 900 personally, but I definitely commend those who have. Breath of the Wild also features a weapon durability system. Throughout your time exploring, running through shrines, or defeating enemy camps, you'll be picking up numerous different types of weapons, all with their own attributes and even movesets. This durability feature, while being extremely divisive, is honestly one of my favorite features in the game. From the moment Link wakes up from his slumber, you have nothing. No armor, no fancy weapons, hell, even your memories are gone. I've always felt that the fun of this game and story is building yourself from the ground up and regaining everything you've lost. In many aspects, you're stranded in the wild with nothing, and it's up to you to find ways to overcome each obstacle and survive. Having weapons both strong and weak be susceptible to this feature really adds to that feeling for me. You really have to scavenge at points in this game, and it really puts the wild and Breath of the Wild in my opinion. The downside to this is that once you progress far enough into the game, most weapons become extremely obsolete, with only a handful actually being viable. The DLC also doesn't help with this issue, as once you complete it, The Master Sword is pretty much the only weapon you'll actually be using for the most part. It's because of this fluctuating difficulty that certain fights, like the final confrontation with Calamity Ganon for example, can feel too easy or even underwhelming. However, despite these shortcomings, I'd be lying if I said this game was anything short of phenomenal. From an outstanding and boundary-breaking open world to a soundtrack that's one of the best in the series, a complete and compelling cast of characters, and a story sure to keep you captivated, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a fantastic return to form for the Zelda series. Ridding this game of linearity and allowing it to set the player on their own path was one of the best decisions Nintendo could have made for this title, and I know that it made me fall in love with this series all over again. This game not only helped to redefine what it means to have a proper open world, but also this series as a whole. The sense of freedom you're allowed is like nothing else we've ever experienced in the Zelda series, and that's what I believe to be the magic of Breath of the Wild. Then there's Age of Calamity. Okay, now to be clear, I don't actually dislike this game, however I do have my issues with it. First announced on September 8th, 2020, Age of Calamity was revealed and advertised as the story that took place 100 years before Breath of the Wild. Now that was something I definitely wanted to see. A prequel covering the devastating events of the Great Calamity. To me, that sounded amazing, and I could only imagine the potential for a story that wouldn't be your typical happy ending. As stated earlier, Breath of the Wild has some pretty dark elements, with the Calamity's history being one of them. Surely we would get to see it in all of its terrible glory. Oh, how I was wrong. So, it turns out that this story deals heavily with time travel elements, and with the help of a guardian named Terrako, the events that we know from Breath of the Wild end up being changed for the better, effectively making Age of Calamity non-canon to the Breath of the Wild timeline. Now, I remember being pretty surprised by this, and I know I'm not alone. Again, while I don't actually hate this story, it all just surprised me and definitely was not what I thought it would be. Now, aside from that, what else do I think about this game? Honestly, not much else. It's for sure a Warriors title through and through, and while there's not as much grinding as the original Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity is far more story-oriented, so that is to be expected. Even with that said, there's still plenty of side quests and objectives to pad out the playtime, so it's not like you're doing nothing. It still has all the huge, larger-than-life battles that fans of this genre will adore, an extremely large and entertaining cast of characters, and a pretty nice soundtrack, all things considered. So, what's the issue? Well, unfortunately, this game runs like hot garbage. Especially on original hardware, man. This title just feels bad to play. Now, don't get me wrong, a 30 FPS game isn't the end-all be-all for me, but this game just takes it to a whole new level of awful. That, along with resolution issues, is sure to deter some people from actually playing this title all the way through to the end. All in all, I think it's just unfortunate. After the height of Breath of the Wild and the amount of anticipation fans had for a potential sequel, this was the perfect title to hold us over until we heard news about a possible continuation of the game we had fallen in love with just 3 years earlier. Maybe it was fan expectations, maybe the game just wasn't what it was cracked out to be, or maybe it was a mixture of both. Either way, I don't believe Age of Calamity lived up to the hype and was unfortunately a letdown for me. However, only 1 year later, everything would change. On June 15th, 2021, we got the first teaser for the long-awaited and untitled sequel to Breath of the Wild, set to be released in 2022. Yeah, so that didn't happen. Flash forward a year later, however, and we got our first official trailer revealing that this newest installment would be titled The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, releasing May 12th, 2023. Finally, the sequel for a game that changed the Zelda franchise was on its way. It was now time to see if Nintendo could really build upon the immense success that they had with Breath of the Wild. At last, May rolls around and the game is released. So, did Tears of the Kingdom live up to all of its hype? Well, kind of. While the game sold incredibly well and was rated highly, I couldn't help but feel a little underwhelmed. I want to clarify that while I do believe Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic game by itself, as a sequel, I find it to be incredibly lacking and kind of unfulfilling. So, what happened? How did Tears of the Kingdom fall so short of its predecessor? Well, while there's no denying that the world of Tears of the Kingdom is bigger in every way compared to Breath of the Wild, it unfortunately fails to capture that same magic and feeling that the original game excelled in. When you first play Breath of the Wild, everything is new. You're dropped into a desolate kingdom with a rich yet untold history that you must find the answers to. You use tools and items to your advantage in order to traverse the lands and piece together the story of the past 100 years. It's a game that rewards exploration and curiosity more than anything. It's these things that make the game feel so rich and rewarding. Collecting memories, solving puzzles, helping the NPCs, all make the Breath of the Wild experience. While this formula works in theory, how many times is it needed before it loses what makes it so special? Tears of the Kingdom largely follows the same structure that Breath of the Wild did, and that's where a lot of the issues lie for me. While I loved the world of Breath of the Wild, I was never left yearning for more of the exact same thing. I always felt that the game gave me exactly what I needed. I liked exploring the land, finding shrines and Koroks, but to have the exact same rhythm repeated in what's meant to be a sequel is nothing short of disappointing. Tears of the Kingdom reuses the exact same map as Breath of the Wild 2 with very minimal changes, so I'm honestly left wondering what the point is. Where's that same sense of wonder or feeling of accomplishment for exploring and discovering more about the world? Again, the formula works for what it is, but this was meant to be a follow-up that should ideally improve or innovate on these ideas, not just flat out repeat them. Even the new additions of the Sky Islands and the Depths are both lacking any substance whatsoever. The Sky Islands were one of the main things advertised for this game, so naturally fans were expecting something of worth going into this title, but instead they feel tacked on like they weren't even meant to be there to begin with. Aside from the main island where we start on, which is essentially this game's Great Plateau, and some other islands scattered across the skies which house shrines or Zonai devices, there's basically nothing up here worthwhile. The same goes for the Depths, a massive, cavernous area under Hyrule that had the potential to be far greater than they actually are. What could have been something of greater use becomes nothing more than a spot to collect weapons that aren't corrupted by the new gloom. The Depths fall into the same trap that the new caves fall into, and that once you've been exploring for around 5 minutes or so, you've likely seen all that these new areas have to offer. Once again, this just feels disappointing, and it makes me wonder why these areas are even in the game, if not to fluff out the world just to make it a tad larger. While I think it's cool that every light route in the Depths directly correlates to a shrine on the surface, or there's mini arena-like fights with Gleeoks in the skies, it makes me wonder why these ideas weren't pushed even further or expanded on in the slightest. Traversing these areas often becomes more of a chore than fun, which is the exact opposite feeling that I was given during my time with Breath of the Wild. Now, one aspect that Tears of the Kingdom really nails is its gameplay loop. I love Link's new abilities, and I think that they are perfect for what new stuff was actually added into this game. From being able to grab almost anything with Ultra Hand, to efficiently leaving a cave system with Ascend, or using Fuse to create some monster/sword amalgamation, this is the innovation I think the rest of the game is largely lacking. I think Fuse is one of the best mechanics ever introduced into a Zelda game, and it's honestly one of the only things that ever makes it difficult to return to Breath of the Wild for me. The ability to create vehicles or different weapons from materials that you would otherwise never use was a great way to reintroduce that feeling of wonder and allow the player to once again experiment however they see fit in order to best get through the game. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of the magic stops. Aside from his new abilities, Link is the same Link we saw in Breath of the Wild with all the same actions at his disposal. Again, I love the way Link feels in these games, so while this isn't an issue from a functional standpoint, if we're comparing the two games, it's harder to find a reason to put this one above Breath of the Wild. Shrines, as well as the 4 main dungeons, also follow the same flow as Breath of the Wild, with the aesthetic being the only thing that really separates them from the previous game. I will say that I actually enjoyed my time playing through Shrines much more in Tears of the Kingdom. It felt as though they were more individually unique this time around. Same goes for dungeons. Or most of them. Tears of the Kingdom also brings back the previous game's weapon durability system. Now, since I've already discussed my thoughts on this feature during the Breath of the Wild portion, I won't go too much more in depth, but the one thing I can say is that Tears of the Kingdom somehow managed to make the opposite issue that Breath of the Wild had in terms of how this feature is balanced. In the original game, you'd slowly get stronger and stronger weapons that wouldn't break as easily before you acquired your final prize, the Master Sword. This was the ultimate reward, a gift for putting up with an often very inconvenient feature during your time playing. Sure, it made other weapons feel obsolete, but at least now you have a super cool powerful sword that powers up against some of the strongest enemies in the game. Getting the Master Sword felt earned. In Tears of the Kingdom, thanks to the new Fuse feature, weapon durability now works differently than it did in the previous game. Now, if your weapon is close to breaking, you can attach a material to it in order to slightly increase its lifespan. While this sounds great on paper, it wasn't long before players figured out what weapon combos were best and completely trivialized almost every encounter in the game. I can't even recall how many times I actually used the Master Sword on my first playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom simply because of how worthless it felt. While this isn't even necessarily a gripe of mine, I just thought it was pretty funny how it all played out. Now, for what is probably my least favorite part about Tears of the Kingdom, the story. I'll be straight up, I don't care for the story and I honestly never have. Not only that, but I'm still a firm believer that the way that it's told and presented to the player is extremely sloppy and honestly pretty lazy. After investigating under Hyrule Castle, Link and Zelda discover the corpse of none other than Ganondorf, who appears to be restricted by a mysterious floating arm. Once the Demon King awakens, a deep red gloom shoots out and erupts from beneath the castle, causing the upheaval. It's in the chaos that Princess Zelda falls into the pit beneath the castle with Link unable to save her. However, before reaching the bottom of this massive pit, Zelda is actually transferred back to the past with Link remaining in the present. After being saved by the mysterious arm once holding back the Demon King, Link wakes up on one of the Sky Islands and the game begins. From there, Link must visit the 4 regions of Hyrule to uncover the secrets of the many strange phenomena occurring within each of them, all while discovering the tears or memories of this kingdom to uncover the past and figure out the truth of what happened to Princess Zelda. This story and really game as a whole feels a lot like Breath of the Wild 2.0. Only that game actually gave me a reason to care about what was going on. We've already heard this song before, so I honestly don't know why Nintendo took such a lazy approach to crafting something that was once again supposed to be a sequel. The story doesn't feel like a continuation of the last game, it just feels like a different story for people who for some reason ignored Breath of the Wild. It also doesn't help that almost every single character that we see who isn't even remotely important has zero recollection of Link or the events of the previous game at all. Again, why is it like this? I honestly have no idea, and it leads me to my final point. As I stated earlier, Tears of the Kingdom at large feels like Breath of the Wild 2.0, and while that isn't the worst thing in the world, no matter how you slice it, it causes this game to lack substance, and I believe that's its biggest flaw. Very few of the things in Tears of the Kingdom feel special on the level that they did in Breath of the Wild, and that's because we've been through it all before. We've explored this world, we've uncovered a very similar story, and we've played as this Link. Only now that magic we felt is mostly gone. New and old areas alike aren't as fulfilling, shrines and dungeons are largely the same with minor tweaks, and while there's a perfectly good game under the surface, as a sequel, Tears of the Kingdom has no idea what it wants to be, and for that, I think it falls a little flat. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed my time with this title every time I've played it, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect. Far from it, in fact. To me, it lacks what made the first game so incredibly special. That magic is just no longer present in Tears of the Kingdom, and that's why I can't put it above Breath of the Wild. A game that had massive amounts of potential that ultimately ends up falling just a little short. On April 2nd, 2025, Nintendo announced what would likely be the final game in the Breath of the Wild era, Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment. This game, similar to Age of Calamity, was said to be a prequel that would tell the untold, or in this case, kind of already told, story of the Imprisoning War, a major plot line in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm gonna be honest, this trailer didn't really excite me. After Tears of the Kingdom and Age of Calamity, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't already feeling a bit fatigued when it came to these games. While I did get a great deal of enjoyment out of them, I was unsure about how much more I would be willing to take before yearning for what I know this series to have always been. I'm glad to say that while it's not my favorite game in the series, Age of Imprisonment grew on me heavily and I ended up liking this title way more than I thought I would. So, at long last, let's dive into the final game of this video, Hyrule Warriors: Age of Imprisonment. First off, I have to commend Nintendo for once again giving us a Warriors title that can actually run well. For the most part. I would say that 99% of my time playing this game is nothing but a buttery smooth 60 FPS experience, with the 1% being an occasional drop or two when the screen becomes too cluttered with opposing forces. Other than that, it is night and day compared to Age of Calamity, with the higher resolution, extremely well optimized lighting engine, and colors that just pop no matter where you look. If nothing else, I can and will appreciate how this game looks and feels. Gameplay wise, it's your typical Warriors title. Giant hordes of enemies, flashy combat, and plenty of hours worth of grinding to be had. One addition I became a huge fan of were the sync strikes. Have two characters team up on the battlefield to deliver a devastating attack on enemy forces. This, along with team synergy in general, are such great features as they allowed me to test out and try other characters that I otherwise probably wouldn't have used. The game is constantly encouraging you to swap to your allies for help during combat, and I really appreciated that. My only real complaint about these new mechanics is that I wasn't really a big fan of the cast of characters we're given to use these features on. Honestly, aside from the main cast, none of the other side characters really did anything for me and felt like more of a means to pad out the roster so it didn't just consist of a handful of people. Age of Imprisonment is also a very grindy game. As of writing the script, I have around 25 hours or so in the game, and I'm still nowhere close to being done with every side quest. While this works for some, it won't work for everyone, and there's a definite chance some players might get bored and tap out early when it comes to all the content outside of the main story. Speaking of the story, how did I like it? Well, it's definitely one of the stories of all time. I'm sorry, but I just couldn't find myself invested in the way I probably should have been during my time experiencing the imprisoning war. While it's nice to have some added context like a shard of the Master Sword traveling back in time with Zelda, or learning more about each of the four main tribes' leaders, I couldn't find myself captivated by a story I already wasn't a huge fan of to begin with. Again, I know that I'm probably in the minority when I say this, but it's honestly how I feel. I do, however, appreciate that Age of Imprisonment at least improved the way the story is presented to us, seeing as this game is heavily story oriented, even down to the side quests, which often take the form of territory retrieval missions. All in all, I'm extremely happy for those who do enjoy the lore for this game and its successor, but it's unfortunately something I was never quite able to get behind. If you like Warriors games and truly enjoyed the story for Tears of the Kingdom, then this is a perfect game for you, no doubt about that. While it may have fallen short for me, there's still plenty of enjoyment to be had for fans of the series from both a gameplay and narrative perspective. While the game can get tiring, especially after long sessions, there's still plenty of content to sink your teeth into for hours. Overall, I would say that while not the greatest entry in the series, Age of Imprisonment did exactly what it was supposed to do, even if it didn't always align with me directly, and I would consider this to be a fitting end to this whirlwind of an era. For nearly a decade, the Zelda series has been innovating and experimenting with these games as a means to shake things up and flip the traditional formula on its head. To reinvent a 40-year-old franchise while still containing that same spirit and passion we've all come to know. While not every attempt was a slam dunk, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't in some way pleased with almost every game covered in this video. Breath of the Wild changed the Zelda series in such a way that made it almost impossible to follow up without missing the mark in one way or another. While some could look at that from a purely negative standpoint, I believe it's a testament to just how special that first game was. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was lightning in a bottle, a special game during a very special time. While I don't believe Nintendo could have ever hit the nail directly on the head in the same way again, I don't think they needed to. Breath of the Wild was everything that Zelda needed it to be, and while the preceding games may have missed what made the original so special, I still believe they're incredibly special in their own right. These past 9 years have been nothing but a gift to this franchise, and as a longtime fan, I'm incredibly grateful for this journey and I can't wait to see what comes next. Breath of the Wild laid the stepping stones for what could be an extremely promising future for the series. But as always, only time will tell.